I never did get a chance. Okay. Make sure we're recording. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to upload from last week. So we're going to be in John chapter 10 this week, and I wanted to go back a little bit. Sandy brought up a good question last week, and sometimes I'm not ready to think on my feet here. So back in John 9, verse 31, it says, "We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him." And so the kind of question posed, does that mean that God only listens to Christians and does not listen to the non-Christian? And we had a couple examples there. God hears the prayers of a righteous man, and some things along those lines. Yeah, bringing the elders together to pray for people, and so there's some circumstances there. And I wasn't thinking on the spot, but one thing we can go back to is Cornelius in Acts chapter 10. It says at Caesarea there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion of what was known as the Italian cohort, a devout man who feared God with all his household. So I think that's important. He's a devout man who feared God, gave alms generously to people, and prayed continually to God. About the 9th hour of the day, he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God come and say to him, "Cornelius." And he stared at him in terror and said, "What is it, Lord?" And he said, "Your prayers and your alms have ascended as a memorial before God. And now send men to Joppa and bring one Simon, who is called Peter. He is lodging with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the sea." When the angel who spoke to him had departed, he called 2 of his servants, a devout soldier from among those who attended him, and having related everything to them, he sent them to Joppa. And then later on, 22, and they said, "Cornelius, a centurion, an upright and God-fearing man, who is well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation, was directed by a holy angel to send for you to come to his house and to hear what you have to say." So he invited them to be his guests. And then later on, and Cornelius said, 4 days ago about this hour, I was praying in my house at the 9th hour, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing and said, "Cornelius, your prayer has been heard, and your alms have been remembered before God." And then later on, we see Peter talking to the Gentiles. There's kind of this sermon in between there to the Gentiles, presenting the gospel to the Gentiles. So might give us some thought to think about, somebody who is God-fearing, someone who is interested in pleasing God. Maybe they haven't become a Christian, but someone who does God hear somebody like that? And I try to think, I guess I didn't have it, but we look back into the Old Testament, and certainly there's things mentioned that the wicked person that God doesn't hear, God doesn't react to. And so you can kind of put those kind of bookends, I guess, in a way. You have the wicked people that God, whether he ignores, whether he hears and ignores, or doesn't hear, one of the two. And then the righteous, certainly of somebody that God may hear. And then certainly for Christians, we would say that he does. So just wanted to bring that together. And I don't know if anybody else thought about that after class last week anymore. If you thought of Cornelius as we closed out the class or not. So anybody want to put a bow on that before we move into John chapter 10, or does that help? Okay. So here's a quick quiz. You don't have a quiz, so I thought maybe we just take some turns here and look at some things we've talked about. So let's go down through. I am the light of the world. Which letter goes into that space? Anybody want to jump in? So you're going to put a letter on the right and a space on the left. And you have to unmute to answer.
Chris answers with Jesus.
Not one of the choices on the right side, though.
That's what I initially thought.
There
Is it the feast? Is that what it was?
That's right. The Feast of the Tabernacles. Remember we talked about the lights, and that was part of the ceremony, this lighting. What about the living water? What on the right goes into that block?
Samaritan woman at the well.
Very good. How about pick up your pallet and walk?
Pool of Siloam.
Yep.
Pool of Siloam.
I was just thinking pool. Yeah, okay.
Pool of Bethesda.
Oh, Pool of Bethesda. I was gonna say Bethesda. because I think because we thought about the reason the Bethesda, that's like the Naval Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland. So we'll go down and go down through here in a minute. So a man must be born from above.
Nicodemus.
Nicodemus.
Why serve the best last?
Water to wine.
Cana.
Okay, water to wine, and then your son lives.
Nobleman from Cana.
Okay, go wash in the pool.
That's
Pool of
G.
Siloam.
That's supposed to yeah. So the pick up your pallet and walk. Remember the waters were stirred and everything, but the man never actually went into the pool. But whereas the man who was born blind, that his Jesus had the spit and the clay and put that in his eyes and said, "Go wash in the pool." I think it was the pool of Siloam. And then I am the bread of life.
C.
Feeding of the 5,000. Okay, very good. You all get an A for the quarter. Very good. All right, John chapter 10. I am the good shepherd. So this is another one of the kind of the I ams. There are 7 I am statements. We'll see these kind of pick up. At some point, I'll summarize all 7 of these. But it says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought all out on his own, he goes before them. And the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So a couple of things, just background from the Old Testament, this idea of sheep and the shepherd. This was a fairly common metaphor, if you want to call it, used in the Old Testament. When they go here and say at the end of it, they didn't understand it, presumably they should have had some association with what they would read or know about, I should say, in the Old Testament of the idea of a shepherd. So Psalm 80:1, "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, who lead Joseph like a flock. You who are enthroned upon the cherubim shine forth." And then Isaiah 40:11, "He will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those that are with young." Ezekiel 34:2, "Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, even to the shepherds, thus says the Lord God, ah, shepherds of Israel have been feeding yourselves. Should not shepherds feed the sheep?" So we see a little bit here of a neglect. They've been feeding themselves, but maybe not their sheep. In Ezekiel 34:7-9, "Therefore you shepherds hear the word of the Lord. As I live, declares the Lord, surely because my sheep have become a prey, and my sheep have become food for all the wild beasts, since there is no shepherd, and because my shepherds have not searched for my sheep, but the shepherds have fed themselves and have not fed my sheep. Therefore you shepherds hear the word of the Lord." So the Lord being disappointed with the leaders, if you will, of not treating their people as they should as a shepherd. And so God being disappointed. And there's some other examples in the Old Testament. Well, I think the last one here is in Jeremiah 23. "Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord. Therefore, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, concerning the shepherds who care for my people. You have scattered my flock and have driven them all away, and you have not attended to them. Behold, I will attend to you for your evil deeds, declares the Lord. Then I will gather the remnant of my flock out of the countries where I have driven them, and I will bring them back to their fold, and they shall be fruitful and multiply. I will set shepherds over them who will care for them, and they shall fear no more, nor be dismayed, neither shall be missing, declares the Lord." So this concept of a shepherd and the sheep already has some establishment in the Old Testament, and kind of the idea of God expecting someone to shepherd his sheep, and his sheep being his people, and presumably the shepherds could be the leadership, Jewish leaders, etc., who were responsible for that. And here in Jeremiah, the Lord being again disappointed with the shepherds who've not done their job. In fact, it says you've scattered my flock and driven them away and not attended to them. But Jesus talking about he is the shepherd, and what he will provide, and being a good shepherd, the good shepherd. So this idea of the shepherd, we see his kind of mission and goal. It's this naturally, he's acting in trust and loving care that's the shepherd that we serve, is one that we can trust and trust to care for us. There seeming was this close relationship between the shepherd and the sheep, so much so that they would know when one was missing, or know if one was in trouble. Isaiah 40:11, he will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those that are with young. So again, the idea, you see this nurturing, this kind of natural taking care of and carrying that we see even outlined in Isaiah. The others, that not the shepherd, the ones to be aware of, are the thieves and bandits. And apparently the Greek word there, bandits, is kind of a similar word, if not the same word, for the thieves on the cross with Jesus, as they were kind of bandits, kind of this way. John 9, there's this disconnect between the leaders and the people. And so there's some of that here, that there's this disconnect between the leaders and the people, whereas Jesus is going to be connected and shepherd his sheep. And the Lord condemns then in the Old Testament the idea of the leaders being concerned with their own stomachs, and you could say their own stomachs, their own wallets, their own cares, and they've kind of created this flock that's confused and hurt and discouraged and lost and at risk, and they've let that happen because they've tended to their own needs instead of the flocks. And then verse 6, it goes, they did not understand. And hard to kind of see with they didn't understand a lot of things, but when they should have had some idea of what this is about, just if nothing else from the Old Testament passages on the topic. So moving into verse 7, so Jesus again said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. So Jesus is the door for the sheep, in letting in and protecting those who are in his care and protecting them from the thieves and robbers. And again, you're back to this, who is Jesus, is a central part that kind of keeps coming up within the Gospel of John. And then now, well, who is he? Well, he's the good shepherd. He's the light, bread of life and so forth. He's the good shepherd now. And I shouldn't say now, like he's acting a different way, but another aspect of Jesus is being explained to them as being this good shepherd and looking out for his flock. In 1 Peter 5, we see the elders are to shepherd the flock. And so I've got just a section from that. So I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have for you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So we see this laid out for elders, and being ones that should be suffering for Christ. And I think it's interesting here that the same idea of not doing it for shameful gain. So we saw in the Old Testament examples, feeding your stomach, or for any kind of gain that should not be done in leadership by the elders. But I also kind of pose to say, do each of us have responsibility as shepherds, in both quotes, not just one? Shouldn't each of us take some responsibility that way, or do we say, well, it's really just for the elders? That's what they should be doing, and really that's doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing. So if you want to open the floor for a moment and talk about that a moment, I'll break here.
Yeah, I think we do. Certainly the elders have quite a responsibility for watching for the whole congregation, which is not always easy. You don't always know what's going on with everybody, and everybody may not go to the elders with their problems, but I think each of us, and we can't be real close to everybody in the congregation, but each of us are close to certain people, and we may know some problems that they're having and be able to help them, and vice versa, they can help us. So I mean, the more of us that help other people, the better, the easier job it is for the elders.
I was going to say the last part of verse 5, says, close yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another, for God opposes the proud, gives grace to the humble. I mean, I think of that as all Christians.
Yep.
We're supposed to be, humble toward one another. And like Jay said, help one another.
Right. And I think there's, within the church, there are some folks that are uniquely equipped to help people in certain situations, that have had experiences that maybe an elder or elders have not had, and can minister to people who are going through a similar experience that they've had in their life. Now that doesn't, it's a little more than shepherding and things like that, but the idea though, and a different thought than oversight and things like that, but certainly an idea of helping somebody in their path of following God. They can do that.
Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I've heard over the years there's a couple of different things. One is, you pick something that you kind of go, well, that's kind of the elder's responsibility, and so maybe somebody, hey, let's go do this and something, and somebody goes, well, I'm not going to do that. That's the elder's responsibility. Well, but is it? I mean, is it really? There's a sense of all our responsibility, and and I think of just things I've seen in the COVID times here of service people have done, and I might say something to them that said, well, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Like, well, yeah. You don't leave it to somebody else and say, well, somebody else has to do this. Well, there's people that just are going about their lives every day serving people and not really trying to think about, well, is this my job, or is it maybe it's one of the minister's job, or maybe it's the elder's job, maybe it's the deacon's job. People just are finding ways to just serve because they feel like, look, that's what I'm supposed to be about, and not get too hung up on what role that specifically plays. Okay. Anything else on that? All right. So John 10 verse 12, he who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. So again, Jesus is this model shepherd that will lay his life down for the sheep. If you go to 1 Samuel, you can read that, but David risking his life against the bear and the lion, willing to lay down his life. And I think this again sets about a whole model of Christian leadership in general, of what one is willing to do for their brother and sister. And when you have somebody that's kind of the hired person, I'm not saying about the minister's hired, but someone who's really not part of the fold, if you will, when things, these hired people are out for the pay. That's really mostly what it's about, right? Is they're just about the hired hand that's being paid to do this, and they really don't care anything for the sheep. And so when trouble comes, they run. And that's not what Jesus is. That's not who he is. He's in it for the long haul. He's in it till the end. And again, he's in it to the point of laying down his life. So this model shepherd that he's willing to give his life for. And I a big, talk about the model of Christian leadership. I'm a big believer that everyone is a leader. I think I saw something a month ago or so. I can't remember what the context was, but it was something about leadership, and I felt inclined to reply about that I think everyone is a leader, and that includes, let's say, a person who comes into work late every day. That person is leading whether they want to admit it or not, because they're setting an example for those around who may be younger and think, well, that's what if I come in late every day and leave early every day, even though they may not be in a formal position of leadership as a manager or whatever, they're still leading by their example to other people. And so I'm a big believer that everyone leads whether they like it or not. There's somebody that is looking to us in some way or not, in some way, just to see what we do, and to sort of, to use the phrase, to follow our lead, right? Whether we want them to or not, whether we meant for them to or not. And so we always want to be careful that, we're leading in a way that, even though we might not be appointed as in a specific office, like a minister or elder or deacon or whatnot, we're still leaders in the congregation to some extent, that someone's looking to see what we do or what we don't do. Anything on that before we step away into chapter 10? Okay. So moving on, John 10:16, and I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I've received from my Father. So this is kind of the Gentile mission, perhaps, is that, you have sheep that are not of this fold. Okay, so we already talked about the fold before. Now there's this other fold. And so presumably this could be the mission in terms of the Gentiles. Some might have taken this to mean, we could have denominations. You have a fold over here, and you have a fold over there, and you have a fold over there, and they're all these different folds and different creeds and different traditions, but they're all part of the one. And that's not what this is really after, because really, it comes back to, I and the Father are one, and so forth. This idea of being one flock. And so it also shows us too that Jesus is in complete control, that, no one's going to take it from him, but he'll lay his life down of his own choosing. And you see, times when it looks like there's a possibility, in fact, coming up here in a moment, that Jesus could lose his life, and, my time has not yet come. And he seemingly was able to delay that as long as possible, till the right time, I guess, for him to give his life. Moving on, John 10. So there was again a division among the Jews because of these words. Many of them said, he has a demon and is insane. Why listen to him? Others said, these are not the words of the one who's oppressed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? So they're still confused. This crowd is still trying to figure out who Jesus is, or they keep hearing who he is, and they just refuse. It just does not. It's what we call kind of square peg round hole. They've got this preconception of what Jesus is supposed to be, and no matter what Jesus says or does, it just does not fit. It just does not fit in the round hole that they've created. They've already decided what they believe he needs to be or he should be, and no matter how much Jesus shows them, to them it just does not fit. And so they're still confused, and they, this must be he has a demon and he's insane, and so forth. So just kind of a side note of the divisions among the Jews continue. So in John 10:22, at that time the Feast of Dedication took place at Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the colonnade of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, how long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly. Jesus answered them, I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness about me. Now, this Feast of Dedication is what we would call Hanukkah now. And I was going to go do a little, side study on Hanukkah, and just didn't have the time to pull that together. But if you'd like to kind of, do a little research about that and tie that back to the Feast of Dedication, I'll let you do that. So stepping ahead here, verse 26, but you do not believe because you are not among my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish, and no one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. I and the Father are one. So this word sheep just continually keeps linking these sections together. Kind of a linking word. It just keeps coming in and linking one section after another in John chapter 10. He talks about those who do not believe. So we've talked a lot about belief, and this is kind of the what about those who do not believe? Well, those who do not believe are not as sheep. And I think even if you go back to John chapter 1, it talks about those who do not believe and what is their fate if they don't believe. And so there's kind of a guarantee here. If you look at this, that verse 28, number 1, I'll give them eternal life. Number 2, they will never perish. Number 3, no one will snatch them out of my hand. So there's this guarantee that even Jesus has put, if you want to call it that, of these people that are my sheep, that know me, that don't stray from me, that I'm going to protect. There's sort of this guarantee that they have eternal life, they won't perish, and have snatched away. Now that being said, we could go into the kind of the when I think of the Calvinist view, the idea that someone can't fall away. And Jay, you're gonna have to help me with the phrase there. What am I thinking of?
Once saved, always saved.
Yeah, there's a fancy phrase for it. And just
predestination.
Yeah, that's one. That's
The perseverance of the saints.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
First, thank you. That's it.
There's an acronym. I forget what it is.
Yeah. There you go.
Tulip.
Tulip. That's right. Good. Way to go.
Yeah, perseverance of the saints. That's what I meant to. That's what I was trying to come up with. So I don't think that's where this is heading. Is to say there's this guarantee you're not going to perish. But the idea, there is an if there. Look, the ones that are the sheep are the ones who believe and stay in that condition. And so we could get to other passages, I think, that would take us out of the idea that the once saved always saved and so forth.
I've always pointed out when I've had these conversations that come with someone with that point of view is there's a difference between being snatched and jumping.
Yeah.
The forces of evil can't prevail against someone that belongs to God.
Yes.
But that doesn't take away your agency.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yep. Anything else on this little section?
I get a kick out of 10:17 because the Book of Mormon says that the other sheep mentioned there are the Aztecs and the Incas, that after Jesus was resurrected, before he went back into heaven, he preached to them. So they're the other sheep. And it even says they're not the Gentiles as ye suppose. It was so I get a kick out of that.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of rounding it out here. Verse 31, the Jews picked up some stones and again to stone him. So back on, we just talked about Jesus is in control here, and his time has not yet come, and then here we are. They ready to stone him again. Verse 32, Jesus answered them, I have shown you many good works from the Father. For which of them are you going to stone me? The Jews answered him, it is not for a good work that we are going to stone you, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself God. Jesus answered him, is it not written in your law? I said you are God. I said you are gods. If he called them gods to whom the world of God came, and scripture cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father consecrated and sent into the world, you are blaspheming? Because I said, I am the Son of God. If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. Again, they sought to arrest him, but he escaped from their hands. And so this section here, verse 34, I don't think I put out the reference here. I said you are gods. There's something from the Old Testament. He's kind of trying to point out and go, well, in your own law, doesn't it say that I said you are gods? And so he's kind of using a little play on words to say, it was allowed to be said then of people. Why can't I say it? So a bit of play on there, and then he really ties to go, look, he starts talking about the Father. And I think that's one thing I haven't mentioned here, and I think it's probably in the last slide there, is just the idea of how many times the word Father is used in the Gospel of John. We talked about how many times the word belief is used, but the word Father is used quite a bit as well. So finishing out the chapter, he went away again across the Jordan to the place where John had been baptizing at first. And there he remained, and many came to him, and they said, John did no sign, but everything that John said about this man was true, and many believed in him there. So even though we see examples of people wanting to stone Jesus, people not understanding him, people not believing him, people confused about who he is, there's still those that are believing in him and following him. So it can be discouraging, I'm sure, to see people that should know better, should understand, should be able to understand their knowledge of the Old Testament to see these things and see how Jesus is able to tie things back to the Old Testament, to things they already should have known, and yet they still rejected him. And here, though, verse 42, many believed in him there. And so it kind of ties back to, again, that overall theme of the Gospel of John. These things are written so that you may believe. So, just kind of tying this up, the message: Jesus cares, he knows, protects, provides, he lays down his life for the sheep. One of the things I left out of the examples for the sheep was, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. That certainly has that idea of a shepherd that certainly you would have thought the Jewish leaders would have remembered that. But as I mentioned, the idea of the Father is used some 74 times in the Gospel of John, and my memory is it was 96 or 97 times the word believe is used. So almost as many times as the word belief. So just bringing home believe. If you believe, if you do not believe, believe in, all those kind of different variants. But just that tie back to the Father. I'm of the Father sent me, and just qualifying himself as coming from the Father. And then this unity of the Father and Son is another key theme in John, that they're one, they're together. And many times what's talked about is what the Father has done, what the Father has already done, and contrasted more so in terms of what Jesus is doing. There's a slight difference in how John presents the difference between the Father and the Son. All right, I think that's all I had prepared for the evening. Any final thoughts or comments?
I think that the point that John that Jesus makes about being from the Father and doing the works of the Father, it kind of contrasts with everyone who doesn't like what he's doing. When they talk with it, what? Don't keep us in suspense. Tell us, are you the Christ? Because they had a different expectation. I almost hear them saying, "When are we going to attack the Roman garrison and get them out of Jerusalem?"
Right.
And it's almost that instead of looking for someone who's like God, they're looking for somebody to be like them that can just accomplish all the things they wanted to accomplish.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. Back to what their view was.
The you are gods references from Psalms 82. But apparently I looked some stuff up on this last week. I think I'd read it before, but there was a sense in the Old Testament where sometimes they called people who are doing God's will, or they were acting for gods, that they called them gods. I don't know why. God's little g. So apparently that that was a thing. So
Yeah.
so Jesus is able to use this against him when it comes up. So it was kind of but it's kind of bizarre, but that apparently they did do that in the Old Testament. So he's able to respond to them by using that.
Yeah. I was this week I was talking to a guy named Dan Hager, and some of you would remember him. He and his wife, he was a student at Ohio State in grad school. He and his wife met at Marshall down in West Virginia, and then moved up here for his grad school. And then he went over to Johns Hopkins to work as an administrator at Johns Hopkins, and he was very interested in working at a very prestigious a hospital, I guess. And anyway, he's basically left that to go into ministry, and so now he's at a church down in South Carolina, I believe. But one of the things he's kind of gotten onto is just the concept of being more like Jesus, and that's kind of his mantra. Not throwing, not of the Jesus movement of the 70s, but and so when you look at this and go, how do I emulate what Jesus did in being a good shepherd? How do I emulate in that life in my life? How should I do that? And we talked a little bit about, even though Jesus is really the shepherd, are there ways that we can do that? And maybe it's a matter of, yes, the elders have a responsibility ultimately, but am I, looking for ways to make sure we keep the sheep, in our fold, and not let them slip away, if you will. So as we look through these, some of these sections, I think, it is a good thing to just look at and try to draw some things out for ourselves, and maybe what we might think about doing in our lives. That was the end there. Okay. Well, let me